Getting back to that three-episode arc that introduces Laurel as Black Canary, there's this minor internet celebrity, I guess you can call him, on YouTube. I mean, really minor. I'm talking like below Christian YouTuber, internet celebrity, named John Campia. Now, he's I guess, the host, the editor-in-chief of this YouTube show called ABC Movie Talk, and it's the AMC movie chain, and they have a web show that talks about movies and things. So that's his day job. So they rent out a studio and do that in California somewhere. So on the side, since he was such a big fan of Arrow, him, his wife, and a few of his friends, they threw together an Arrow after show. Now, there's a lot of these after shows now where, like, pretty much any show you can think of, Gotham, Supernatural, fucking, Bar Rescue, you can find anything. These after shows where people commentate about the episode of a show after the episode airs. So, yeah, on his free time, without getting paid for it or anything, he and his wife and his friends, they made an after show and encourage people to become Arrow evangelists and tell people about Arrow. And first two seasons, I was with the guy. Tell people about Arrow. Arrow's a great show, right? But the thing that's absolutely was like the final straw for him, because I guess with the rest of the show he's okay with, but his problem was with this three-episode arc with Laurel becomes Black Canary, and he referred to it as the Laurel Apocalypse. And he said that if Laurel becomes Black Canary and they do it in such a way that's not believable, like he was willing to give it a try, but if they did it in such a way that it wasn't believable, that he was going to drop the show. Because with like people like Oliver and the Sarah Lance, Black Canary, and Merlin, their abilities and things. I mean, of course, it's not realistic at all, right? But at least you can buy in some way that they were able to get their specialized skills and things, because it took a long time for them to get to that place. So, both Merlin and Sarah Lance, they were trained by the League of Assassins for years. Um, Oliver was trained by Yao Fei on the island and trained by Slade and got experience with working with Argus and Maseo and all that crap, right? So you can kind of buy into the logic. But with Laurel, she's just like this scrawny, like, woman who took some boxing lessons. And, granted, in the first season, there's a scene where she's roughs up some guys in the club that are giving Oliver and Tommy shit. But that's it. That's the only hint that she can actually, like, beat up some dudes. And we're supposed to buy that she can become a full-fledged street vigilante. It's like she has the friggin' Green Lantern Ring of Power or something. It's like, as long as she has the will and the imagination, she can do it. And as a result, he gave up on the show after the 10th episode because he stuck to his guns. And I give this guy credit because he stuck with this show for an entire episode more than I was willing to. And I don't believe I mentioned this yet, but I've only seen the first 9 episodes of this show. Then I dropped it, which is really bad. I would say this season of Arrow, I'd say it's probably one of the top 3 worst seasons of a TV show I've ever seen. I would go that far. It's up there with yeah, Walking Dead season 2 because I dropped that about halfway through, and 24 season 6, which I guess 24 season 6 by default would be the best of the 3 because I actually stuck it with that till the end. So anyway, people were criticizing John Campea because I guess he's a minor internet celebrity and people make videos about him. I wasn't even aware of this. That he dropped the show over just Laurel, and it's just like, people saying how he took his ball and went home and things. And it's like, my attitude about the whole thing is that if you think the Laurel Lance Black Canary thing is the worst and only thing wrong with that show, I don't know what the fuck show you're watching. That is almost like the least of that show's problems. And you notice that it took me like 13 parts just to make my way to the Laurel problem. I was talking about a bunch of other problems prior to that, and there's still more to come. And it's just another problem. It's not the only one. So, hey, I got respect for the guy for sticking to his guns because he could have just kept going with the show. And he's had Stephen Amell on the show a couple times. He was a big fan of the show, and he said it. He felt that rushing Laurel Lance's Black Canary was insulting to the audience, and he stuck to his guns and he dropped it. So I don't see what the big problem with that is. And the whole thing with like Laurel becoming Black Canary in a way that's not believable is kind of like it's just a bigger issue of what is wrong with this season, what is wrong with the show now. Because now it's like, whereas before the show was like Nolan Batman grounded, realistic, it was like the Mike Grell run on Green Arrow in the late 80s, early 90s, where it wasn't like full blown cartoon comic book. Like it was grounded in some kind of reality. Superpowered people. If they did show up in the Mike Grell comic, they showed up depowered. It was trying to be at least on some level somewhat believable, somewhat grounded. You only had you had your suspension of disbelief at a certain level, like I've talked about before. Now they just gone full-blown comic book logic, and it's just very jarring because it's not consistent with how the first 2 seasons of the show were. And I guess just because now that Flash is running around looking like a complete asshole fighting wannabe X-Men, and the particle accelerator went off, and all those other things, I'm supposed to now totally change my suspension of disbelief. I'm sorry if this sounds like I'm retreading something, but there's more to it than just that. It's more to it than just the particle accelerator going off, and now there's just superpowered people everywhere. Now it's other things too, and we'll get into this after the initial 9 episodes I'm gonna rant about. Yes, I'm gonna be doing another series after this, talking about the second half of the season, the remaining 14 episodes, I believe of it. That is episodes 10 through 23. And since it's not like you can just get that on demand, and I wasn't like recording them as they aired or anything, I'm gonna have to pay some asshole to actually watch these episodes. In reality, they should be paying me to watch them since they're so freaking terrible. But anyway, so they start getting into like character deaths and resurrections, like in comic books. And that may be okay in a comic book. You may be able to get a pass on that shit in comic books because there's a comic book trope. In DC, they're the original inventors, the innovators in pointless character deaths in comics. Look at the death of Superman, which turned out to not even be a death. He just went into a Kryptonian healing coma, and and for all intents and purposes, it's just like dying if you were a human. So it's more like people were confused and thought he was dead. And he conveniently never mentioned to anyone that Kryptonians go into a Kryptonian healing coma when they get badly injured. Talk about contrived. And you gotta believe these comic book people have tons of like bullshit crap they can pull out of their ass to come up with the excuse of killing a character and bring them back to life. So that's one example of the comic book logic. We also, of course, the crossovers. We've gone over that. That's a comic book trope. Characters crossing over into each other's titles and things just when it's convenient. It's not like they can just do it all the time. It's not like the Avengers are always assembled and they just work together. For some reason, they gotta split apart and have their own solo stories. It's like, wouldn't they just work better as a team all the time? And of course, like I said before, same thing with Green Arrow and Flash. There's no reason why they can't just work together all the time. The aliases. Right. So people get like super villain and superhero names. Like in the second season, Clock King shows up, and people just start calling him Clock King. It's like that doesn't happen in real life, but again, it's a comic book trope that they suddenly just started doing. It's like if they'd done this in like the early, the first season and stuff, it wouldn't just be like, oh, well, this guy's Clock King. They'd be like smarter about it. And of course, in like real life, people don't just refer to people as their like nickname. Like people still call John Gotti. They don't just call him Teflon Don exclusively. So that's another thing with the comic book logic. Like I said, superpowered people. Oh, the coincidences. The convenient coincidences. So like I mentioned before, for example, the Slade showing up in Starling City when Oliver's second year back from the island, when it was exactly 5 years prior that Slade and Oliver had their big falling out, so it would align with the flashbacks, coincidence. Dr. Ivo showing up on the island with the same island that Oliver just happens to be on that I mentioned before. So there was a plot on the island by Amanda Waller to shoot down an airliner. A year later, totally unrelated, mad scientist wants super soldier serum that's also located on the island. The fact that Merlin and Sarah Lance, two people that Oliver knew, just happened to join the League of Assassins, coincidence. In the first season, Oliver has a run-in with Deadshot, and then the very next episode, we learn that Deadshot just happened to kill Diggle's brother. Coincidences, right? But it seems like this stuff seems to be happening a lot more lately with the coincidences. And again, it's the comic book logic.